Thank you for joining us today. I'd like to start by saying, if you thought Republicans were going to wait until night 3 to unveil their plan for containing a virus that is killing thousands of Americans each week and crushing our economy, I'm sure you were sadly disappointed. Last night, like the 2 nights before it, truly, in our opinion, vacillated between an imaginary list of Donald Trump's accomplishments and an alternate reality meant to erase the disease plaguing our nation and the last 4 years of division and rhetoric that has driven the country further apart. Last night offered no roadmap to defeat the virus, a virus that has claimed the lives of more than 180,000 Americans. It offered no roadmap to rebuild our economy to work for the middle class. More than 16 million people are out of work and have filed for unemployment insurance. It offered no roadmap to reassure the families that were watching at home, who are crying out for leadership and to feel like their government is working for them. We also heard almost nothing about the massive hurricane bearing down on the Gulf Coast or the tragic suffering and protests for justice happening in Kenosha, Wisconsin. All we heard were more scare tactics and more fear-mongering from an administration that has spent 4 years dividing the American people and inflaming tensions. The main rationale that we were even given for their re-election was the specter of violence and division. With all due respect, Mr. Vice President, that violence is happening right now in Donald Trump's America. That division is happening right now on your watch. You own this. And Donald Trump has spent his entire term actively fueling hate and division. Let's not forget, after the murder of George Floyd, he even encouraged violence and tear gassed peaceful protesters for a disgusting, self-serving photo op, worsening a crisis for his own optics. What's especially shocking and appalling is that this morning, Donald Trump's senior advisor, Kellyanne Conway, who spoke last night at the RNC, just celebrated this terrible pain and destruction happening on Trump's watch, saying on Fox News, and I quote, "The more chaos and anarchy and vandalism and violence reigns, the better it is for the very clear choice on who's best on public safety and law and order," end quote. Well, let me just say I have news for Kellyanne Conway and Donald Trump. Welcoming this suffering is nihilistic and disgusting. And Donald Trump is in charge right now. Donald Trump has stoked this climate for years because of the sick mentality that she just displayed, thinking it will help him somehow politically. But the American people have taken notice. Poll after poll shows that Joe Biden is who voters trust when it comes to keeping them safe. Joe Biden is who voters trust to address crime. Joe Biden is who voters trust on criminal justice reform. And that makes a hell of a lot of sense. I mean, not only is the unrest taking place within Trump in office, but his botching of the pandemic response has cost, again, over 180,000 of our fellow Americans their very lives, with over 1,000 more dying every single day on average. Look, tens of millions of folks have lost their jobs. And if Donald Trump thinks that this chaos and division he is sowing is going to help put people back to work, I think he has another thing coming. The American people are crying out for the sort of compassionate leadership that Joe Biden offers. Compassionate leadership that will heal wounds, not deepen them. Compassionate leadership, which Donald Trump has shown himself so miserably equipped to provide. One could argue incapable. The American people need a president who can step up when the country is in crisis. They need a president who can provide steady, experienced, competent leadership when lives are on the line. The American people need a president like Joe Biden. With that, I am going to introduce you all to one of my favorite people on the planet, and someone we are just so very grateful to have with us in this fight, Mayor Pete Buttigieg. Mayor.
Well, good morning. Thank you, Simone, for your leadership, and thank you for reminding us what is really at stake right now in this election, reminding us how we got here in the chaos of Donald Trump's America. I want to start by saying we're all thinking about those who are impacted by these storms bearing down and impacting the Gulf Coast and parts of the United States. last night was like witnessing an alternate reality, confirmation that the Republican Party, and in particular Donald Trump and Mike Pence, are profoundly out of touch with the experiences we're having as the American people, which helps to explain why, as of right now, the Trump-Pence ticket is losing so badly. You know, through the last several days, I've been hearing about this remarkable man who delivered peace to the Middle East, acted swiftly to defeat COVID, is deeply committed to empowering women. He sounds like a great guy. I hope I'll meet him someday. It is peculiar that he shares the same name as our current president, given that in every other respect, he couldn't be more different. As a matter of fact, the only thing more mystifying than their characterization of Donald Trump was their characterization of Joe Biden. I think one of the reasons why the convention's message is falling flat with the American people is that no one looks at Joe Biden and thinks that they're looking at a radical. What we have in the Biden-Harris ticket is the kind of leadership that America is crying out for, the compassion that we need, the basic competence that we need, and a readiness to deal with the issues we're actually facing on the ground, like the economic devastation that is a direct consequence of the Trump-Pence administration's failure to confront the coronavirus crisis, something that took up less than 5% of the speaker's time during this convention, as if it were an afterthought, when this is something that has profoundly changed life in America and is causing so much pain, economic, physical, across our communities. They are simply incapable of even explaining what the game plan is. So they're out of touch with the reality on the coronavirus, out of touch with the economic reality that we're experiencing. And when it comes to foreign policy, again, we heard an account of this president's supposed diplomacy that completely glosses over the collapse in America's respect around the world. You know, there have been various times in American history when other countries have been upset with the United States. This is the first in my lifetime when other countries have expressed pity for the United States. And you would have no idea about America's standing in the world if all you had to go by was the alternate reality that the speakers were trying to create last night and through this week. And by the way, I heard China mentioned quite a few times. Let us remember that this is the president who praised Xi Jinping's, quote, transparency on the coronavirus issue, and who gave a green light, according to his own former national security advisor, John Bolton, to atrocities in Xinjiang province. We will not be lectured on the subject of China by this Republican Party or this president. And when it comes to what is consuming so much of our attention, at a moment when there is an outpouring of anguish in our cities and across the country over racial injustice, we are seeing a president who characteristically refuses to take any responsibility at all. And Mike Pence last night painted a very strange picture indeed. He can't have it both ways. On one hand, he said that the amount of stability and peace and safety in our cities depends on who's president. But Donald Trump is president right now. All of this is unfolding on his watch. And honestly, after years of his fanning the flames of division and chaos, what did they expect? This president has done nothing to bring Americans together, nothing to address the root causes of the pain and anguish over systemic racism in this country, nothing to heal, nothing to stabilize. And there is no reason to suppose that in another 4 years of Trump-Pence mismanagement, things would get any different. It is very clear that Donald Trump and Mike Pence have offered nothing but chaos to the American people. The American people understand this. That is why their message is not resonating and they're losing.
Thank you, Mayor Pete. At this time, we'll have time for a couple questions. If you would please raise your hand, we'll get those all queued up. While we're doing that, I just want to remind everyone, the War Room sent out a fact sheet earlier this morning titled Country in Crisis. It's about how Americans are paying the price for Trump's failure and his chaos. Also, I want to make sure everyone saw the new ad from the Biden for President campaign. It's a 2-minute ad that I think really lays the stakes and shows the leadership we can have in the White House. And with that, I will start with Paul Steinhauser from Fox News. Paul, are you on?
I am, Chris. Always good to see you. And Mayor Pete, been a while. Haven't seen you since you were up here in New Hampshire. Good to see you as well. Yes, sir. This question, I guess, could go to the mayor and to Simone. I spoke with the Trump campaign this morning, and they're going on with the schedule tonight for the convention. The president will have his address. There is some precedent here. We all remember 2008. I was in Minnesota with CNN in those days covering that convention, Republican convention. It was mostly scrapped. The first night of the convention was mostly scrapped due to Hurricane Gustav, which slammed into pretty much the same part of Louisiana where the current hurricane is. So I'm wondering, what is the Biden campaign? Can you weigh in here? Do you think it's wise for the Trump campaign to continue with the convention tonight? Should they postpone or delay it? Love your take.
Well, I'll invite Simone to offer the campaign perspective. What I'll say is that Americans are hurting right now. Americans are hurting because of the danger posed by this storm, just as Americans are hurting because of the harms of this virus and the economic devastation that's going on too. And we need leaders with compassion and empathy. We haven't had that. And it's one of the main reasons why I think a Biden-Harris presidency is going to be so important to us. But that's the day-to-day. I'll invite Simone.
Thank you so much, Mayor. I mean, look, I am not in the business of advising the Trump campaign, let alone the Republican National Convention, but leadership would mean doing what is in the best interest of the people in the Gulf Coast, the folks in Texas, the folks in Louisiana. They need assistance right now. So look, we didn't hear anything about the hurricane last night. Understanding though, last night during the RNC, we knew what was coming. Last night, I believe it was a category 5 at one point. I know it's been downgraded, but the reality is they haven't led on this issue. And so our hearts and our prayers are with the people in the Gulf Coast right now. And I can promise you this, that when Joe Biden is president, people won't have to wonder if leadership will be standing with them. People won't have to wonder if they have the resources that they need. We will do the job.
Great, thank you. Do we have Lisa from PBS?
Hi guys, thank you for doing this. 2 questions. One is just a little bit logistical. Can you talk about what the vice president is doing this week? Is he watching the convention? Is he taking time off? I'm not trying to weigh judgment on that. We're just I just want to know exactly what he's up to. Obviously, we'll see the Harris speech today. And then another question about sort of the law and order message that Republicans have been presenting and talking about the protests and violence and not the victims really of police. We've seen some polling out this morning that in Wisconsin alone, the state is divided over Black Lives Matter protests. And in particular, it looks like whites surveyed they're less supportive of Black Lives Matter protests now than they were a month ago. Can you all talk to how you address that? Republicans are making a very clear attack. They're claiming, everything from you guys want to abolish the suburbs, all of that. Are you concerned that that is taking hold with some voters and especially white voters? And how do you combat that?
So I will take the first part of your question first. Obviously, Vice President Biden is very abreast of what's going on in the country this week. You saw him issue a statement via video yesterday about the events in Kenosha. And in that statement, what he did is gave his thoughts and prayers to the people in Kenosha, talked about what he would do, mentioned that he spoke with Jacob Blake's family, his mother, his father, and Jacob Blake's sister yesterday, both he and Senator Harris, but also gave a very clear condemnation of the violence. as Vice President Biden has often said, protesting brutality in this country is necessary. It is extremely American, but burning down communities is not, looting communities is not, violence is not. And we condemn the violence. And I mean, hearing the words of Jacob Blake's mother, Ms. Jackson, I mean, those were some of the most powerful words that we've heard. And I think it takes so much courage and strength, given everything that she's going through, to also stand there and encourage people to take the temperature down. That's something we have not seen the current president of the United States do. To your comments about what the Trump campaign is trying to paint us with, look, I think the Trump campaign has cycled through one debunked attack after another, including this very one over the summer. But none of these attacks are sticking. And we are not going to play Donald Trump's game, and we're not going to fall into their trap. There is obviously the violence should be condemned, and we have done that, and we will continue to do that. But obviously, there is also a real crisis happening in this country. There's 4 crises, actually. We have a crisis of an economic crisis, a public health crisis, a climate crisis, but we also have a crisis of racial injustice. And there's a reckoning on race currently happening in this country. And part of leadership is addressing all of those crises and having a plan for each of them. We heard nearly nothing about any of those crises throughout the entirety of this Republican National Convention.
And look, most Americans agree. Most Americans agree racism is a problem. Most Americans are horrified by the news that a man who was unarmed was shot 7 times in the back. And most Americans agree that there's no place for destruction or violence alongside nonviolent protest. That's the really astonishing and disturbing thing about this presidency, is when we have a major moral challenge and most Americans largely agree on the most important questions, the president has managed to divide us around that, because the division for him is the point. He gets political benefit from it. We need to be unified at a moment like this, precisely because we're dealing with such tough challenges. I also can't help but think that there's just no sense to the phrase law and order escaping the lips of a president whose campaign and administration have set records in terms of the numbers of indictments and guilty pleas associated with that orbit.
And do we have Tommy Christopher from Mediaite?
Yeah, hi. Can you hear me? Hello?
Hey, we can hear you.
Oh, good. Yeah, Mayor Pete, Simone, thank you for the call. I guess my question is for both of you. This call is about how the RNC, they haven't been talking about the coronavirus pandemic, and they haven't talked about the unrest in Kenosha and the shooting that caused it. So my question is, what would you like to hear Trump say if he were to address those topics in his speech?
So, Tommy, I mean, I'm interested in Mayor Pete's thoughts here. But look, the reality is, it's not about what we want to hear Trump say. The reality is that Donald Trump is the president right now. And as the president of the United States of America, his administration, again, I talked about the 4 crises that we're currently experiencing and how we heard next to nothing about not just mentioning these things, but also a plan for them. And part of leadership is a plan, and Donald Trump does not have a plan. He has failed to contain COVID-19. He has, I mean, Larry Kudlow the other day during the Republican National Convention talked about COVID in the past tense. Is coronavirus gone? Is COVID-19 gone? I didn't see any masks or social distancing happening during the vice president's speech last night. So the reality is that there is a lack of leadership here, and that lack of leadership has led to more than 60 million people being out of work. That lack of leadership has led to more than 180,000 Americans dying. And so what we have been saying, and what I will reiterate again today, is that Donald Trump is not up to par to do this job, but Joe Biden is. And not only will Joe Biden name the things that need to be named, he has a plan. Look, when it comes to these new testing guidelines that were set forth, we need to be expanding testing right now to get this virus under control, not limiting it. And Vice President Biden believes we need to listen to experts like Dr. Fauci and the American Medical Association, who have both expressed concern over this decision. For months, Vice President Biden has been calling for a national testing strategy and mobilization so we can get this virus under control. More than 8 months into this pandemic, President Trump is still unwilling or unable to get the job done. And so this is about a plan. This is about leadership. And this is frankly about how Donald Trump has failed the American people. At every turn, when he is needed to step up and get the job done, he has failed.
That's right. I'm much more interested in what a president does than what the president says. Although it would be nice to hear some words that could unify the American people at a time like this. But at the end of the day, there needs to be a plan. A real president right now would be able to explain how America will get out of its current position as doing the worst of any country in the world at containing this devastating virus. Some plan on how this economy was actually going to be put back together. Some plan on how to move America out from the shadow of systemic racism and deliver safety, justice, and peace alongside one another. We know we're not going to get that from this president. And yet we know that America has needed more than ever a president capable of offering that kind of leadership. And that's why Joe Biden's presidency can't come soon enough.